Hey guys, Dev with Crime Hive, and we're back with another episode. This time we're going back to the Lori Vallow daybell case, and this video is going to cover the red flags that investigators really uncovered that led to Lori Vallow daybell's arrest. And when I talk about these red flags, these are all pulled from the affidavit. And when I talk about the affidavit, this is what we're going to be referring to. It's probable cause affidavit. And if you guys are wondering what probable cause is, I'm just going to talk about that real quick, and then we'll dig into these red flags that I'm seeing as I go through the affidavit. And we'll just go through that here. So probable cause, if you guys are wondering though, it's basically what's needed for a police officer or a detective to make an arrest. These are facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe that a crime has or is being committed by the particular person that they're looking at. So that's just a pretty straightforward definition, and those facts and circumstances are what we're going to cover. So the other thing I want to mention real quick is reasonable suspicion. This is covered in a lot of cases, and a lot of people don't know what reasonable suspicion really is. And this is what's needed to stop someone, a police officer or a detective, someone in law enforcement. They need what's called reasonable suspicion to stop someone, and they're essentially detained. That person is detained, and what that amounts to is articulable reasons that an officer has that there's criminal activity ongoing and that person is potentially involved in that activity. So they'll detain someone to question them about that and determine, are they committing a crime, or was this actually nothing and they're free to leave. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's what constitutes a stop for someone. And so anyway, we're talking about probable cause, and we're going to dig in. So again, before I get into the case, if you like my channel, subscribe, like my videos, comment, let me know what your thoughts are, what you'd like me to cover more, and we're getting into this case right now. So the first red flag, and first, just for those of you that may not be aware of this case, I'll just briefly mention that this is about two missing children. We've got 17-year-old Tylee Ryan, and we've got 7-year-old JJ Vallow, also known as Joshua, and they're missing to this day. We still don't know where they're at. We don't know if they're alive. This case actually opens up really on November 25th, 2019, as there's a welfare check. We've got JJ, I'll refer to him as JJ, his adoptive mother, Lori Vallow, is supposed to be taking care. So you've got the adoptive mother, Lori Vallow, who we're talking about as the person that was arrested in this case. And she's supposed to be in care of these children. Well, JJ's grandmother, Kay Woodcock, calls in this welfare check in Rexburg, Idaho, because she hasn't heard or seen from JJ and is concerned. So just to give you guys an idea, the first red flag that we're talking about here, as I go through the affidavit, is we know that on September 23rd, 2019, Lori pulls JJ out of elementary school and basically tells school staff that she's going to start homeschooling him. Well, the next day, we never hear from him again. We just simply do not hear or see JJ again after that. I mean, September 24th, he's no longer at school, and he's missing. So that's red flag number one. Red flag number two that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to refer to my notes here, is right here in number 7 of the affidavit. So it's going to be basically Brandon Boudreaux. If you guys have already heard, there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of backstories here with this case, and it can be really confusing. And I do have other videos if you guys want to check those out to kind of learn more about the case. This video, though, again, is covering these red flags. We've got Brandon Boudreaux in Arizona. This is Lori Vallow's niece's ex-husband, okay? He was essentially shot. His vehicle was shot at. A bullet almost hit him in the head. It was an attempted murder charge that police were looking at. And Brandon believes that Lori was involved in this. And for reasons, again, I get into this later, but this is a red flag for investigators because they're looking at this missing child case and they see that Lori's involved in this potential attempted murder in Arizona. So they're already scratching their heads wondering what is going on here. And of course, the Jeep that was involved was the vehicle that was identified. This Jeep was identified as the vehicle involved in that shooting, and it's registered to Charles Vallow, who was Lori's husband and was shot by Lori's brother, which we can talk about here in just a little bit as well. So that's red flag number 2. Red flag number 3, we're getting into Charles Vallow right here. This is in number 8 of the affidavit. So this right here, Lori Vallow's husband was shot by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Okay, and Alex seems to be a factor in a lot of these other deceased individuals and potentially the missing children, and we'll talk about that in another video. I already have, but essentially Brandon sees a rifle with a silencer aimed at him, and this is when he was coming home in Arizona. He was shot, sees the Jeep. He believed, and I saw this from a report, that he believed that it was actually Alex that shot him. This isn't, for sure. We don't know. Alex, of course, is deceased. We don't know his side of that story. We can't talk to him about it. This case is very bizarre. Very bizarre, you guys. There's a lot to it. But that's red flag number 3 that red flag number 3 that we're going to talk about, or that was just discussed there. So Charles Vallow's death. Red flag number 4 is in number 9 of the affidavit. So we're going to go to that part. Now, this in itself is really strange, because we know that Chad and Lori, let me just explain Chad if you guys don't already know. This is Lori Vallow's current husband, and they went off and got married in Hawaii. Well, they get married 2 weeks after the death of Tammy Daybell. Tammy Daybell being Chad's wife. Okay, Chad Daybell is married to Tammy Daybell. Tammy dies. Police are now looking at this as suspicious. Originally, it was not considered suspicious, but with all these factors in the case, now we know that she dies 2 weeks. They get married 2 weeks after she dies. There's just too many coincidences in this case. So that is the next red flag as we go down through the affidavit, as detectives, again, start putting these pieces together, getting the evidence they need to go to a judge and get the authorization to arrest Lori Vallow. So next red flag that we're going to talk about. And by the way, I should have been using these pictures here. I was going to tell you, this is Brandon Boudreaux, who was shot at, attempted murder at his vehicle, ended up hitting his vehicle. And then you've got the Charles Vallow case here, where Charles is shot in the chest by Alex. There was police body cameras that were on Lori when she returns to the scene, and she just seems nonchalant, relaxed. You guys can see videos on that. Just doesn't seem to care at all. And a lot of people think, that Lori is a sociopath because of this. Just no emotion involved in this sort of. This is a traumatic incident that happened. When someone shot and died, and she just acts as almost. She even smiles and laughs at one point if you look through the body cam footage. So crazy there. Anyway, the next red flag I want to talk about is in number 9. This is when Chad and Lori were married. Okay, there's no photos of the children. Okay, no photos of the children here. So if you're looking here, there's a ton of photos of them when they got married, and there's no evidence that the children were in Hawaii. No evidence that they were on a plane. They didn't arrive with Chad and Lori. They were not at the beach resorts. They were not at any location. And by the way, investigators did conduct surveillance throughout this case. And through their surveillance, they never saw a sign of children with Chad and Lori. So again, these pieces of evidence are added to the affidavit, and that's what we're talking about there. So no photos. Okay, so that's what we're talking about in the affidavit. No photos are seen of JJ or Tylee in the wedding and during the wedding. So that's extremely odd. It's a huge red flag. Okay, so next red flag that I want to talk about in this case here is, now we're kind of going back. They kind of start talking about the welfare check now with the missing JJ, and they start this case starts to develop, and they start talking about how Chad they made contact with Chad on that day, and he claimed he didn't know Lori's phone number. So that's in number 10 of the affidavit here. So right here, this is again on November 26th. Detectives are conducting this welfare check. They actually meet with Alex Cox outside the residence, as well as Chad Daybell. So they're outside the residence, and Chad says he doesn't know Lori's phone number. That is a huge red flag right there. So when I saw that at the beginning when I was reading through the affidavit, immediately I knew Chad had to have something to do with this case, because he's already lying to detectives. And he later claims that day, later detectives made contact with him again. He gives them Lori's phone number and said that he actually did know Lori's phone number. So that's really strange. Now, the other thing, though, that was strange, the next red flag that I want to point out is Alex was also asked questions by detectives, and he said that JJ was with his grandma, okay, Kay Woodcock in Louisiana. Now, if you guys remember, Kay Woodcock was the individual that reported this welfare check in the first place. So detectives are already like, okay, this isn't making sense. And they're already getting these individuals caught up in lies. Again, deception. Detectives, when they start sensing deception, it's not good for that person. I mean, they are going to follow that trail now, and everything's going to be recorded, analyzed. It's already adding up. So huge red flag right there. The next red flag, number 8. Okay, this is a longer video. I've been told that some of you guys really like the longer videos. Let me know if this is too long. We can always shorten it down. There'll probably be another segment on these red flags anyway, because there's so many of them through the affidavit. But the next one is in number 12. Okay, so we just go down a little bit further. Now, this is where Melanie gets into the picture, okay? This is Melanie Gibb. It's a friend of Lori Vallow, and detectives actually locate Lori in the apartments later on. They start talking to her about, where's JJ? She says that JJ is in Gilbert, Arizona with Melanie Gibb. Okay, so they start trying to track down Melanie Gibb, and as you go through the affidavit, they try to call her. They haven't been able to reach her. Finally, they get in touch with her on the evening of the 26th, and Melanie Gibb surprisingly says that JJ was not staying at her Arizona house and had not been there for several months. So you've got 3 people now already caught up in lies that investigators are already uncovering, okay? So really strange. Another red flag. And then next one here. This is huge. This is a huge red flag right here. So this is red flag number 9 that we're talking about. This is number 15 of the affidavit. December 6th, 2019, Melanie Gibb was then later contacted by Chad and Lori Vallow, okay? Or Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, and both of them at separate times apparently actually told Melanie to tell police that JJ was with her, and she said that she was not going to do that. She was not going to tell police that JJ was not staying with her, and so she actually tells police about this. And this is when investigators know that these statements by Lori are false. So already several lies, okay? Huge red flags. Red flag number 10, Lori and Chad, they leave the same night that detectives visited in relation to this case. So they're looking at this welfare check. Well, they bounce, they leave, and they're gone. And then, of course, we know that they end up in Los Angeles. They fly out to Hawaii. So anyway, the next day, detectives actually get a search warrant, and they start searching the apartments that are where JJ supposedly lived. They're trying to figure out what happened to him. So they execute a search warrant. Now, that's red flag number 10. Red flag number 11. Let's go back to the affidavit here. Back to number 18 here. So we know again right here, Chad and Lori leave the night of the 26th. It says it right there in the affidavit. Now, the next thing I want to talk about they found evidence in Lori Vallow's apartment. And this is interesting because there was medicine prescribed to JJ. It's called risperidone. It's basically, it was a pill bottle, and it's a tranquilizer essentially, because if you don't remember, JJ had autism, and he needs to treat that irritability that he has, and he uses this medication. Well, what's weird about the medication is it was prescribed January 2019, and this was in Arizona. Well, they find the pill bottle in Rexburg, Idaho. It still contains 17 pills, not been filled since. Okay, so really strange. He apparently is not taking his medicine anymore, and there's still pills in there suggesting that he hasn't been taking it for some time. Another huge red flag. You know, this is where investigators are really starting to wonder, is he actually missing, or is there something else? Is there foul play involved here? So next up here, and I want to talk about the storage unit. Okay, this takes place in number 19 of the affidavit. And I'm just going to go through a few more here. This is a long video. I'm going to go through just a couple more. And we're talking about the storage unit that investigators also found out about. Okay, and this is registered to Lori had this storage unit in Rexburg, and they found items in there. And let's look at some of those. So right here, this is what the storage unit looks like. They find kids' items. They find bikes and toys and books, kids' books, and all these things that would belong to a child, just stuffed into this storage unit. Now, what's strange about that too is Lori was not making any more payments. She essentially abandons this storage unit and leaves to Hawaii. She made no effort to change out the debit card that apparently the storage unit tried to, take a payment out and wasn't going through. It was declining. She made no effort to change out the debit card, and she essentially just abandons the storage unit with all these children's items in there. That's the suspicious aspect about it, is these are items that children would want to have and play with, and they're just locked up. So as we're going through that, you can see here, just like I mentioned, right here, the storage unit, they were talking about that. Next up here, just a couple more, you guys here. How you guys liking this so far? Is this good information? Have you guys had a chance to look through the affidavit? If not, it's really interesting to really get a full picture of this case. The next thing I want to mention is, this is an interesting one, is the brother of Tylee. Okay, you got Tylee's brother, lives apart from her. They speak through FaceTime, and he had not FaceTimed her since August 30th. Okay, so we actually go to number 22. This brother, if you guys don't know, is Colby Ryan. He's been seen a lot in the news lately. He's been talking about the case with media, and he is right here. You guys probably recognize his face from a lot of the reports, and he's seen with Tylee here. So they used to FaceTime, and every time he would try to FaceTime, Lori would give excuses of why he couldn't talk with her. So he started to feel like, this is weird, this is odd. He's not able to talk with his sister anymore. That was documented in the affidavit as well. All right. Now, I think we're just going to go through really one more. The last one I want to cover today is the BYU class lie as well, and that's in number 23 of the affidavit. Another lie by Lori, just a lot of lies. So in this one, we know that Tylee moves to Rexburg around September 1st or September 2nd, 2019. She leaves to, she comes there. She's supposedly going to attend classes at BYU, Idaho for school. And Lori tells Melanie Gibb this information because we know that, Tylee is now missing, and this record check that detectives did showed that Tylee was never enrolled at school or any other school affiliated with BYU. So you've got Lori telling Melanie this lie. And that's where I want to end with this video. There's going to be a part 2. We're going to continue through the affidavit. We're going to continue to uncover these red flags as we go through. I hope you guys like this video, and There will be more. Again, subscribe to my channel. This is Dev with Crime Hive. We'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.